Hey y'all, it is Hope here at Crafty Hope, and welcome. You can see I've pulled out the same art journal that I have been working in for the last 2 or 3 art journal pages that I've shared here on YouTube. This is one I handmade using a bunch of book pages, some cardboard, some fabric. At some point I may do a tutorial on how I made it, but first I'm trying to see how this one holds up after I pack it full of stuff. So I am going straight in with this. You can see there's that book page there, but there's also a bit of eco-printed paper that I'd put on the other page, the previous page. I don't think I recorded that one, that ended up getting like flipped up there. So it adds some really nice texture and color that I'm going to go ahead and just go in over that. And I'm using some scraps, as you can see, that are on my desk. I may have actually cleaned my desk and found these pieces and we're like, hey, let's jump in the art journal here. And I'm using fluid matte medium and a silicone spreader to adhere it. So the fluid matte medium is nice because it's fluid and it dries matte. That's very much my style. I'm not usually somebody that really likes shiny stuff in my journal, but in this one we're gonna get a little bit of shiny in there. So but I'm kind of just throwing a bunch of things that I like at this journal or at this page. Again, just scraps and the fluid matte medium. I'm putting in a couple pieces of scrapbook paper in there. That's what that blue is. And I really like the color of that as well. The design that's on it is very subtle, so it's not something that's kind of too obvious. Like there's some little floral things on it and a little bit of writing, but it's nothing that's gonna like overpower anything. So my little silicone spreader thing, the dried up matte medium that was on there started peeling off, so I had to get that. I do love peeling things. I may, and somewhere else in this video, be peeling something else. It's one of those, like, I don't know, like peeling paint, and yeah, if something will peel up, I tend to do it. I think that's part of the reason I really try to make sure when I stick things down like this that I get it adhered really well, because I know my tendency to peel. But maybe I should play on that. Maybe at some point I should stick a bunch of stuff down, leaving the edges up, and try to peel it up and see what happens. That might not be an art journal project, maybe a canvas board or something like that. Anyway, because I brought that scrapbook paper in that has that really pretty blue-green color, it reminded me a lot of my my favorite DecoArt Americana paint, which is sea glass. And I was like, okay, well, I'll help draw that color in here, and that'll help integrate these pages a little bit more by kind of splashing that color around the page. But instead of doing splatter like I normally would or putting gesso down, I am doing a little bit of mark making. I've got a really small flat paintbrush there, and I'm making these kind of like squarish dots around on the page. I think I decided here that I needed, a little bit more, because I didn't actually put any of that on the pieces of paper that are that same color, and I kind of wanted to do that just so that if the color's not exactly the same, I'm making sure it's integrating everything. So from there, I'm bringing in my Stabilo all pencil, and it's a blue, and I don't know, a lot of times when I use the sea glass, I bring in this blue crayon. It's starting to become one of those things that I turn to pretty often. And I don't know why. I just like the blue on blue. And normally I would circle all my little dots, but instead I was like, okay, let's do something different. So I'm doing a little bit of scribble underneath each of these square-ish dots. So that bottom line of all of them, I'm just scribbling a couple times, and then I'm bringing in a pretty small paintbrush with water and activating that Stabilo just to kind of get a little bit of a blur on there. And as I do that, I think I get a little bit too much water in a couple places, so I'm going to try picking that up here in just a minute. And when I do the acrylic paint that's on there gets removed a little, and I'm like, oh, I really like that. So here, we're gonna get to that. I've wet all of my Stabilo at this point. I've gotten a paper towel. I'm trying to pick up some of the excess water that's on there, and like I said, I end up picking up some of the paint. So I decide, hey, let's see how many of these I can remove some of the paint from. So I'm going into a bunch of them that kind of look wet and getting them really wet with water, and then trying to lift that paint up. So I knew right then it wasn't going to be like a huge statement-y thing, but it was just kind of fun to do, to leave that like ring of paint where the paint had dried. And I don't even know if you can see that in the photos, the close-up photos I'm going to have at the end of this video. It's just something I thought was super cool to do. Like I said, I'm bringing a lot of things I really love into this page, and one of those things is coffee. So this is just, if you've seen my style or seen me do before, you know what this is a yogurt cup with dried up instant coffee. I'm reactivating it, and y'all, there's not much left in there. I think I may need to add some more coffee into my cup. But I reactivate it with some water, and I'm just kind of scribbling on the page. This again is going to help integrate all these different papers and colors and all of that. Once I did a little bit of scribbling with that coffee on there, I did splatter it. I'm going to put my paper towel over there, kind of, because this is getting kind of bulky, that page is leaning. So I put that over there so the coffee can kind of drain over onto my paper towel. I saw the other day I had these willow sticks. They're charcoal willow sticks I forgot I had. So I did a little bit of scribbling with it and then blurred it a bit with my finger. I almost cut that portion of this video out because you'll never see it. Those scribbles are absolutely invisible now. And from there I was like, you know what I really would like to put down is some crackle. So I decided to go for this clear or translucent, I can't remember what it's called. It's from Ranger. It is a crackle paint that I'm putting down with another like silicone brush tool. And I'm putting it fairly randomly on here, trying not to cover up the whole page. But can y'all see how shiny that is? The shininess absolutely stays with this clear crackle. It is not a matte crackle. So crackle itself feels very rustic, but when you put the shiny one down, you kind of lose that rustic feel of it. So I'm going to try to work with that a little bit, and I'm going to leave it to dry for just a minute while I go and figure out like what I want to do with my focal, and that's where we're going to spend a big portion of this time coming up, is with the focal. I did take my finger there and blur some of the edges to make sure I didn't have any like sharp lines because that silicone brush is sharp edged on the side. It tends to leave like sharp stripes, and I wanted to blur that out. So I wanted to add some softness to that page and a little bit of, I don't know, lace and linen. So I went and I found I had this, some kind of, I don't know, maybe a napkin, maybe a bread cover, maybe, I don't know. It's linen, it's lace, it's got this yummy like vintage color to it. So I tore a little piece of it down, and from there I kind of decided how big I wanted to make this little bit that I'm tearing to pieces. Now you can see I am definitely trying to tear it down so I can get those frayed edges, which adds a bit of texture and a bit of rusticness and softness to my pages. And I was really trying to just work, like I said, work with the things that I love and see what happened and try not to force anything. So I pulled out some mother of pearl buttons and some embroidery floss. This just happened to be on my desk. It is a dark brown, and I thought, yeah, that'll work. That kind of goes with the coffee that's already on there, so I'm going to use it. So from there, I'm trying to find a needle in my pincushion that isn't too big. I wanted to keep the needle eye kind of small to make sure it could go through the buttonholes. So I wanted it large enough that I could easily thread it. So there was my conundrum. So from there, I am putting a knot at the end of my thread, and I'm going to dump out the buttons, just kind of grab a handful randomly, put them on my desk, and start sewing them on to this little piece of fabric. Oh, and Artemis had to come get in my lap while I was doing it. So I'm going to stitch these on, kind of keeping them, it wasn't planned this way, but I end up keeping them all kind of in that upper left corner. And I just was feeling kind of stabby. Like I just wanted to stab some fabric and sew some buttons on and just go to town. So that's exactly what I'm doing. Just gonna stitch these on. Now with the 2-hole buttons, I'm going through them 2 or 3 times, and with the 4-hole buttons, I'm basically just gonna form the X on them. I think one time, you'll see. I'm gonna speed this up like 8 times speed here in a second. Partly, I mean, I could just skip ahead because y'all understand how to sew a button on. But I just wanted y'all to see like how I did it and kind of what pattern I was doing, because I know that when I watch videos, I like to be able to see what's done, even if I have to speed it up. And I've sped it up because, otherwise I have to fill this space with me talking about it. So, as I am doing now. So, stitching these on. The big thing for me was to try to remember, as I moved around on this piece of fabric, to try to stick fairly close to where I had stitched the previous one. Because if I moved too far away and pulled that thread too tight, the fabric kind of like buckled and bent, and I did not like that look. So I'm trying to work around the same ones, and I don't know. And also I kept finding myself picking up the same size buttons. I was trying to work in, a couple smaller or larger buttons as well. And I did think about trying to put a button like on top of them and kind of thicken up that stack of them, but I just it felt too fiddly. Granted, I wanted to stab things, but that just felt far too fiddly to try to work in one more. So once I was pretty satisfied with my button cluster I've got going on there, I am kind of tying off the ends of the thread here on the back. I was staying mostly behind one of the buttons and going through the thread and doing that and trimming it pretty close because I didn't really want that. And you can see I'm counting the buttons because I wanted to keep an odd number. So anyway, I was trying to keep my thread tucked, trying to make sure I had an odd number because odd numbers are like more pleasing to the eye or something. And I wasn't sure at that point if I was going to put like a sentiment there or add something else or whatever. So I thought about it for a minute and started cleaning up my desk. And I did the thing I don't like to do, which is use my heat tool to dry the rest of that crackle. It had crackled pretty well, but I was getting tired of waiting. So I'm going to pull out my heat tool. I'll admit that crackle does tend to do better. Most crackles anyway, if you just let them air dry. But I didn't have the patience for it. So from there, I grabbed some of my fluid. It's a golden fluid medium, nickel azo gold. I don't believe you can buy nickel azo gold anymore, but I do believe there's a comparable color out there, but I don't remember. It may be just called azo gold or nickel gold or something like that. It's a similar color that Golden makes, I think, to replace this because I don't remember exactly why. I think there was something about the availability for some of the ingredients to make this color, something like that. Anyway, since it is fluid, I'm not really watering it down. I'm putting water on my brush, but not in the actual paint. And I am applying it to the places where I've put that crackle and kind of just a little bit out from it because I didn't want it centered directly only on the crackle. I wanted, that to kind of bleed out and not be so weird. But basically I have created rusty crackle because to me this nickel azo gold color looks just like rust. That's what it is. When I want to add the color of rust in it, I either use this or some of the Tim Holtz Rusty Hinge, and I did think of bringing that in to this page as well, but I didn't feel that was completely necessary since I do have the nickel azo. I did try splattering anything that was left on my brush on here. wasn't super successful. And here, yeah, you're going to get to see me peeling some of the stuff out of this. Like I said, I've got a thing for peeling things. I made myself stuff. It's like, Hope, you're recording a video. Stop peeling. I guess I was feeling stabby. So I think I was kind of, yeah, just trying to do things that felt good to me. So like stimming a little bit. I wasn't happy with, yeah, that bit of the nickel azo glow didn't kind of go off the page. So I added just a touch more, let it dry while I went and found a rusty washer. It's a rusty washer. That I felt like needed to be on that little bit of fabric to kind of incorporate that rusty color that's in the background. I wanted to make some marks here, kind of big, bold marks, but I didn't want to do it in black. So I decided my coffee had been sitting there for a while, kind of marinating and thickening, and I decided to go in with it and make some marks. And y'all, look how dark this coffee got just by sitting there and not, because you saw the first layer of coffee I put down. It added some brown on there, it added some darkening, but it was not this dark. So this kind of shows you, if you have a little patience to wait for the coffee to, like, I don't know, stew or marinate or steep or whatever you want to call it, you'll get a pretty nice dark color to it. And it matched that little rusty washer really nicely too. So I'm kind of moving things around so I can get a better look at the page and think on what I want to do. And I'm going to end up going ahead and grabbing the rest of that brown thread that was on the needle, getting my knot in it. And I'm going to stitch down that washer as well. So, and I'm just going to put 3 stitches in it, and this first one I'm going to go from the inside to the outside, and then I think I'm going to go from the outside to the inside to get these, yeah, so I don't have to glue this or anything. I'm using the same method I used to stick down the buttons. And as I was doing this, I was kind of thinking about, if I was going to leave this page without a sentiment and just let it speak for itself, or because, not a lot of art in itself has a big sentiment sitting on it, but in an art journal, sometimes I want to put a message down to kind of let myself know what I was thinking at that moment, what this page was saying to me, because it is my art journal. A lot of times that's what an art journal is a journal to explore your art and kind of express yourself in a day-to-day basis. So I decided to go ahead and let's just go ahead and stick this down. I'm using some Beacon 3-in-1 glue or adhesive, or yeah, it's Beacon 3-in-1 to stick this down. I'm trying to make sure I get over the top of my knots and the thread and all of that, so it also will make contact, and then stick it down. I am leaving the lace portion kind of hanging out. I do like that peeking out of my journal. It's so yummy that way. And then as I was looking around my desk, I saw this bit of some kind of book paper that had some of that same paint on it that I had just taken excess paint. And I was like, oh, well, that could really work perfectly on top of all this other stuff. So I took it to my typewriter and typed out the sentiment, you don't always have to go with the crowd. Stand out. And that's just how I was feeling. It felt like that mother of pearl button, as much as I do love those buttons, as much as I do love that crowd, sometimes I feel like a rusty washer. I don't have to be with, exactly like that crowd that I'm, despite loving them and loving what they do and loving, the elements that they represent to me. I don't always have to be with that. I can be the rusty washer that, is with them, but not completely. So, that's just kind of how it felt to me. I don't know if any of that makes any sense. Do you know what I mean? Do you understand that whole idea that you can love a group, but you don't have to always be like part of them and match them and be exactly like them. So that's all I was trying to say. I did ink up the edges of that with some Distress ink in walnut stain, of course, and then I'm just using my Uhu glue stick to stick that down. And that'll finish up this page. Again, it was something where I just used the things that I like, the colors I like, the materials I like, and while it is not, some standout page above all pages, it was a lot of fun to just jump in my journal and do, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. All right, here's a couple looks at them. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to hear from you, and thank you for spending this time with me. I'll see y'all later. Bye.